Well, it's Wednesday, October 14th. I thought I'd do another update on the state of the presidential race. So we've had a lot of things happen. We've, of course, had the presidential debate, which we've talked about before in a couple of videos, and then vice presidential debate, which I did a video on. And so we're not going to have a debate until what would have been the third, and now will be just the second and final debate, apparently. Um, so essentially, looking at the polling right now, at this moment, the Real Clear Politics average of polls has Biden up by 9.2%, which is up about 3% from where it was before the debate. The other thing to look at is that went back and looked at the Rasmussen poll. Kind of shocked me in the last couple of weeks. Simply, not that I was surprised it went in Biden's favor, but by the magnitude is what I was a little bit surprised at, falling to down 8 points from being nearly even, and then to 12 points down. That seemed a little bit too volatile to me. And the thing you have to consider about any kind of poll is that they are statistical. They're sampling. You can throw several tails in a row, tossing a fair coin, And I think that maybe this is what happened. I mean, they're all based on a confidence interval of 95%. And, well, sometimes you're out. There is the other 5%. Nevertheless, I think Trump did do himself some real damage in the debate, is my consensus at this point. And the other thing I would say is that it's hard to know what the impact of him coming down with the coronavirus really is. He's obviously recovered from it, but it did throw him off the campaign trail for a week and a half, and that could be time that can't be made up. It's very serious. I think he's basically from my point of view, in a environment where he cannot afford to have another goof up, so to speak. He needs to have a mistake-free campaign from here on out in terms of any major issues. And that's certainly possible. You never know with Trump. So at any rate, by the way, I mentioned up here, please subscribe to this channel if you're a regular on YouTube, and give me a like, and I will keep doing these videos. One thing I'm not doing, I'm not asking you to contribute to a Patreon account, so don't plan on doing that. This is free stuff. Okay, getting on with the situation. Another poll I followed back in the 2016 race, which I thought was rather interesting, was the the IBD TIP Investors Business Daily poll, and interestingly enough, after the debate, it had Trump actually rising from 8 to 3, then had him falling to 11, and now the latest one that came out today is 7. Again, you're seeing a lot of polling volatility this year. It seems like, I don't know what's going on, whether people are changing their minds or people not answering, who knows what's going on. But at any rate, it seems more volatile than I seem to recall in previous elections. So I guess the 7 number is somewhere in the middle, so that may be what you want to believe. The latest Rasmussen came out today, and it is at Trump down 5, Biden 50, Trump 45, which is a big improvement over the last one, let's say that. Looking at the internals, it seems like basically, if you look at the different groups, weirdly enough, he's about the same place he was before with women, around 41 to 42%. With men, he's fallen off by 7% from 52 to 47. Blacks, African Americans, holding constant at 22%. And that is a rather big improvement for a Republican candidate over any recent election. I mean, a Republican hasn't gotten that high of a rating since I think Nixon versus Kennedy in 1960. So let's see if that really materializes in the real vote. I mean, it's interesting that a good part of Trump's support is in the minority community, according to these Rasmussen polls. The other group, which is called Other, which basically I attribute to being Latinos, Asians, and a few other groups, biracial, Pacific Islander, indigenous peoples, etc. And that Trump is running really strong, up from 47 to 52%. Now, I think in these subgroups in a poll, the statistical confidence is quite a bit lower than the overall global number is. But nevertheless, it gives you a general idea that he's again doing a lot better than he did in the last election with these groups, and I think this may be one reason why there's a little bit of a fear factor in the Biden campaign, even though they seem to be just waiting for their landslide, if you believe the mainstream polling, is that these groups they normally count on are kind of diverging, and apparently Trump's real support actually is, ironically enough, with white people. I mean, if he was doing normal with that group, which is the largest group still in the electorate, he would be singing a pretty happy song, unlike where he is right now. So I think the key to Trump, if he can do it, is to try to discipline himself to be a polite gentleman from here on out. Accept the fact that the moderator is a Democrat and he's going to be unfair, but just still try to stick to your script, have good answers to the questions you know you're going to get, even the ones that really outrage you, and have a nice little 30-second spiel if they ask you if you're a bigot or something, and then use the extra 2 minutes to pivot to whatever you want to talk about, but do it in a disciplined way, and in the next debate, and he might do a little bit better here. That's my advice. Might improve your support among the female electorate and I guess white men as well. I think the other group to look at, of course, are the independents, and he's definitely fallen off a little bit in the independents category, although in fact about almost 9 points on that area according to this poll. So. At any rate, that gives us a kind of look at the landscape from a polling point of view. There are other people out there that have theories about how people are answering the polls, and one of the reasons, again, I've mentioned before why I focus as much on Rasmussen is because of the fact that they're using an automatic voice thing rather than talking to an individual, and I thought that people in general would be more comfortable just pushing a button, one for Biden, 2 for Trump, 3 for other candidate, or 4 for uncertain, or something like that, than you would telling a person if you were one of those people that were shy about coming forward. For myself, I wouldn't be shy, but I think some other people are. And that could be a factor, although I really hate to bet the whole future of the world on that subject, I did see some polling. The other thing that was sort of allegedly, according to Rasmussen, believes is driving the changes was the Amy Coney Barrett appointment or nomination, excuse me, to the Supreme Court, and the idea that actually hurt Trump with the groups that he was falling off with, including Republicans, just seems strange to me. The other aspect I find interesting is this group that he actually is still holding in there strong with Democrats. To say that's a small group. It was 14 moving to 17, but the fact that throughout all these fluctuations, the Democrat numbers really didn't go against him at all. That have improved a little bit lately, which I find interesting. Again, when you get these subgroups that are, only a few percent of the total sample, I tend to think those may be a little bit, less certain. Let's put it that way. Of course, so the key to all this obviously is turnout. Who really turns out and who really votes? And of course, the thing is close enough now, I think, that you got to go out and vote. I mean, from my point of view, voting has started now where I am, and I actually drove by the early voting place, didn't go in. Pretty big line there, so my attitude is wait a few days and see if it drops off a bit. I'll probably, besides, I don't really have I don't know all the propositions and local candidates for sure yet, and they're not listing them by party, so I definitely would want to make sure I got the right people. So I'm going to do a little study on the local stuff. I tend to focus more on the national, just my nature and what I watch on TV and stuff, I guess. Okay, so that's kind of it for now, I guess, on the overview. We'll just have to see what happens. I guess Trump is out on the campaign trail now, and I do think that Trump is more of a motivator than a persuader in a lot of ways, and so it's kind of important he motivates people to turn out. One would tend to think, just looking at the crowds he's drawing and the fact that these aren't, as far as I can tell, these are not rent-a-crowds. These are not, or it's not a situation that some organizations like unions, like Walter Mondale at the end of his failed campaign in 1984 had some large crowds during the last week. But I think what was going on there was that various unions and teachers unions and labor unions, whatever, turned out their people for in an organized way. Whereas I think the Trump crowds are pretty much spontaneous. He simply announces where he's going to be and they show up. So that does give him some potential to overperform the polling, I think. And, so it's, I somehow I do feel the talk show hosts are overly counting on these things, but you never know. And the one thing is you won't feel good about yourself if you don't do everything you can here, because the consequences I point out before are quite stark. I mean, in the Amy Coney Barrett thing, if she presumably will get confirmed, but that leaves the Democrats in the position of retaliating by really, using the nuclear options I described before, and totally upending our constitutional system. Because if you effectively turn the political the situation so that the Supreme Court is simply a tool of the legislature, and they can add new people with the biases they want at will, not filling vacancies, but creating new seats in the number they need, then the actual Constitution really means little of nothing, really, except for the parts that are so written in text. And even there, I don't know. I mean, everybody realizes that, for instance, D.C. was never meant to be a state. It was created so it wouldn't be in a state. And yet they're talking about making it a state. That's just an example of what I think is a clearly unconstitutional violation. And, you have the Second Amendment issue, which I think is another significant one, largely because of the archaic language in which it's worded, and it's being interpreted by liberals as simply meaning that states have the right to have a National Guard unit, or that's or a militia. That's I don't believe the concept was originally intended, but the vague wording is sufficient to allow that sort of opportunity. Well, I guess other than that, we'll have to see what happens. And of course, the Senate races again are all key, because regardless of what Trump does, if the Democrats don't take the Senate, their more outrageous plans will fail. On the other hand, I think that if Trump doesn't win, the chances of holding the Senate aren't that good. That's kind of my viewpoint. The two kind of go together. I mean, when you look at a lot of these races, like for instance, the Lindsey Graham race in South Carolina, Quinnipiac has a dead heat. Okay, well, of course, it's Quinnipiac, so I don't give that a lot of credit. And add to the fact, if Trump is going to win the state fairly strongly, then I would tend to think he'll pull Lindsey across the finish line, just because the Trump voter will typically turn out and vote for, for the most of them will vote for Lindsey. Of course, I did point out that there's a significant factor of, of certain minority communities are key to the Trump vote, and they might vote against Lindsey. You never know. That's the kind of thing that's kind of unclear. The one thing would probably be helpful would be if some independent PAC were created to give the Green candidate some support and visibility. That might pull some votes away from Biden. Apparently nobody's decided to do that. Well, there's this Lincoln Project trying to disrupt Republicans from Trump. It seems to me like that, at least in states where there isn't a strongly competitive Senate race, it might be interesting to do that to try to help the Green candidate to take a couple of points away from Biden. That might be useful too. But I don't think that's even happening. So, and that's the other final thing I guess I should address here. With the fringe candidates dropping down to nominal levels rather than the nearly 6% level they had in the last election, this makes it, I think, a lot more challenging for Trump, because so much of this election is Trump or anti-Trump. I don't think anybody to speak of is really wild about the idea of Joe Biden being president. That's not really that. the thing there. I don't believe it. It's more that a lot of people are voting for Biden as a surrogate for just somebody else, and that's something that's difficult to overcome in this environment without a strong support for some third party candidate that would draw some of those people away. They're not like either one of them. So that's, I guess, about it for today, and I'll conclude this. And until next time.